So welcome back to Fatal Female Friday. For this episode, we're going to be doing another somewhat modern case. This happened back in like 2013, 2014, so like almost 10 years ago, which is kind of crazy to think about because I literally remember like I was in middle school during that time, and I feel like that was literally like just yesterday. So anyway, so let's go ahead and get started. It's not exactly known when our killer is born for some reason. I don't know if that's because it's like I couldn't find it like anywhere. But we know she was born eventually. And so in 2004, she was like misdiagnosed for like fibromyalgia, which if you don't know what that is, like, because I didn't know what that was, it's basically like muscle pain. And so you have to take like prescriptions for it. And so she got addicted to the prescriptions. And then it was later revealed that she was actually misdiagnosed for it. And then in 2009, she was actually arrested. Yeah, so 2009, she was actually arrested for apparently stealing a prescription pad from a clinic and trying to, like, prescribe herself some more oxycodone, which that's what it was called. It was called oxycodone because at this point, remember, she's addicted. And so in July of 2010, she has a little son named Roman, which is the subject of today's story. She apparently had 3 other kids before that, but it's not, I couldn't even find when they were born or their names, which, of course, they're minor, so, of course, that's not going to be public information. She didn't complete like the treatment plan because remember she was addicted to substances. She failed probation twice somehow, which I thought if you failed probation once, that was it for you. And she only served 6 months. And so if that wasn't bad enough, if that was all she did, obviously we wouldn't be here today because it's not called Fatal Female Friday for no reason. So in July of 2010, she has a son named Roman who's born, who is the subject of today's story, unfortunately. Apparently, she had 3 other kids before Roman because it said he's the youngest. Obviously, their names are not going to be public because they are minors. I mean, they're like little kids, and this is over 10 years ago. So, yeah, they're safe to assume at the time of this video, they're all still minors. So, obviously, their names aren't going to be open to the public. And so, Lord Roman ended up being addicted. He was born addicted to methadone. And so, they obviously, for obvious reasons, they had to get him slowly off the drug. And then once they got him off the drug, they put him in foster care. 3 older siblings that I just mentioned earlier, they were all taken away too because of like drug exposure in the house. Roman ended up going back to his father, which is Raquel's husband, which I assume is the father of all the children. DPS, which is like CPS, where I'm from, basically. They basically had like a case plan, and Michael was supposed to follow it, and that apparently included that Raquel, despite being the mother of all the children, weren't allowed to be near her children. And so he followed it, and so he got custody of all of them back, and then once he got custody of all of them back, he brought her back into the house. For some reason that Raquel was not feeding Roman, like she was feeding like the other 3 older siblings, right? But she wasn't feeding Roman. The siblings weren't even allowed to like care or feed for him. In fact, apparently he was locked into a room like by himself, so that way nobody could possibly like get to him or take care of him. And so the family with these 4 kids and these 2 adults were staying in 700 West Idaho Street when they were eventually evicted. In March of 2014, so apparently they got kicked out in 2013, their former landlord named Mark was out cleaning out, like, I guess, like, it says, like, their patio or something, or some sources say patio, some say backyard, and so they were cleaning out what I guess they had left over after they had left because they got evicted, remember? And so his uncle-in-law, so it's his wife's uncle, calls him over because he found like skeletons in a toy box. And despite this being March, he somehow assumed it was Halloween decorations.
Halfway, take a few.
I guess they got kicked out around Halloween, so I guess that's why he would suspect that. Yeah, so Mark is like, that's kind of weird. So he goes over, checks the toy box, and sure, it's not Halloween decoration. It is the remains of Roman. So Roman is now dead. Roman's been dead if there's skeletal remains, basically, what I'm trying to point out here. Somehow, to this day, they still know exactly when he died. It said he died between, like, the fall of 2013 to like when they found him. But I would say like somewhere around 2013, if he literally was just a skeleton, knowing what I know about decomposition, which is not a lot, but I know like a good bit, I would say definitely 2013 for him to be a skeleton. Probably late 2013, but definitely 2013. It is said that his remains, like, I didn't know that you could cremate just skeletons, but apparently you can. The skeletal remains were cremated and then given to someone close. It didn't disclose whether it was like a grandparent or something, but I assume it was a grandparent. So we're at the trial, and the family said that the two of them, Raquel and her husband, started getting distant shortly before Roman had died, and they would get like really secretive when asked about him, which...
That's suspicious. That's weird.
So they call it DCS, as they should. Many call it DCS out of concern, and the last they had heard from him was 2012. August of that year was apparently the last time that the caseworkers had contacted them. The prosecution is obviously going to be like the type to like call her out on her bullshit, whereas the defense, who's the person defending Raquel, they were trying to paint her as a drug addict that didn't know the extent of what her child's injuries were going to be.
Bullshit. Bullshit.
So 2019, Raquel was finally sentenced to life in prison without parole. The charge was first-degree murder, abandonment, and of course, worst of all, hiding a corpse. And apparently the abandonment and the hiding a corpse is supposed to run like concurrently, so like at the same time as the life sentences, but she ain't getting parole anyway, so it's not gonna matter. The child abuse charge, but apparently the child abuse charge added like 24 years to her sentence, which I mean, she had life anyway, so they were really trying to make sure she don't get out. And of course, you know, like, I guess she wasn't expecting life without parole, so she went and appealed her sentence, and basically saying some of the things that she confessed to earlier were not true, despite there being evidence somehow. She tried to claim that the part where she would leave him covered, like she would have a blanket covered over him and left him alone in a playpen, and there was allegedly she also beat him with like a broomstick. She said those should not be used in court because they are irrelevant and unfair to justice.
Bullshit. Bullshit.
And then she also tried to say that Roman's older brother never saw his remains.
Why the fuck you lying? Why you always lying? Oh my god. Stop your fucking lying.
She also argued that her Sixth Amendment rights were not being used properly, and because a proper jury apparently couldn't be found, and she thought that it was unfair that she was serving a life sentence for first-degree murder and child abuse. Like, she didn't like how those life sentences were back-to-back. In other words, she didn't like how there was no way of possibly getting out, unless it was in a body bag. Because the state obviously had a theory that she withheld food from Rome. She said that that would make her look like a bad mother.
No shit, Sherlock!
And then she also tried to say that the broomstick theory, you know, her beating him with a broomstick, she tried to claim that can be used in court because his older sister is the one that saw it, and she was 5 years old at the time, therefore making her too young.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
But the craziest thing of all, she even said that any testimony regarding finding the remains should not be used in court because she only pleaded guilty to the child abuse.
Bitch. The dog.
But luckily, but I guess unfortunately for her, but luckily for us, the court was decided, you know, we're all going to use, like, it was all usable in court, so.
That's called boy tipping.
The father, because I know y'all are wondering, like, what happens to the dad? I was wondering that too. He ended up getting the same charges as Raquel, so, you know, the child abuse, first-degree murder, abandonment, corpse, yeah. He ended up getting the same charges. Apparently, somehow he managed to get a plea deal. He rejected the plea deal back in, like, April 2019. He said, we're going to go to trial, because, you know, they say, if you take a plea deal, that means you're guilty, right? And so, had he took the plea deal, he would have just got 25 to life. Because remember, Raquel got life without parole. He could have got 25 to life, but because he rejected it, now he's going to trial, and he's risking getting 45 to life.
You big dummy.
And then, when you know it, he ended up later getting life without parole, just like Raquel did.
That's called boy tipping.
So now they're both currently in prison. It's not actually known what prison they're in. that's not even public record either, which from what I could find. I basically given all the information that I could find. And so, yeah, that's pretty much the case of Roman Barreras. So that's pretty much all I have for today, and I will see y'all all in the next case. Bye.